Okay, so the next thing here is, or the next manufactured item is our FA20000 again, and I've got an component ID of FA20000, again unique within the rule set. Config component sequence the same as above. Got my parent component ID, again linking it back to that parent item's ISIS cur part. I've got the part number in there, quantity, and operation number. And again, that operation number would either be operation 10 or 20. In this case, it's 10 because that's how we've set it up in the example. You just want to make sure that that exists in the parent. The FA20000 again has operation 30 in it, and you'll see that the component ID in here is FA20000, okay, because we're building a bomb and routing structure for the FA20000 and not for the customer hours part. So I've got my operation number and work center, and then I've got two different instructions for operation 30. So I've got line 1, okay, and that's instruction number 1, again component ID linking it back to the manufactured item, or to the FA20000. Operation 2, okay, so it's going to create line 1 and line 2 when it comes back into Syteline. And then our purchased item TDCI support, okay, so again that has parent component ID of FA20000, has its own unique material ID, okay, we've got a quantity in there, and then an operation number again that's been defined for that bomb component rule, which is operation 30. So if you reference an operation that doesn't exist, you'll run into some problems, and we'll look at that in a little bit. Okay, now this next item was our FA30000 item here. And again, it has its own unique component ID. It has a parent component ID of ISIS cur part, and a part number, quantity, and again an operation that exists for the parent. Now, if you remember that the FA30000 was a manufactured item, okay, because it's a bomb component rule, but it's not configurable. So even though we have this structure laid out here, again, it's going, when it returns a Syteline, it's going to pull the current bomb from Syteline instead of the bomb that we have set up in the configurator. So I've just set this up just so that you can see that. Okay. So the next item that we had here was our TA10000, and again it has its own unique component ID. Its parent component again is the customer hours, so we're using that ISIS cur part system variable. We've got our part number, our quantity, and operation 20, which again exists for the parent. Okay. Okay, and then we'll talk about some of these other rules here in a moment. But the last one I want to talk about is the create component rule, again, which kind of sounds like the bomb component rule, but does something totally different. Remember, it calls another rule set. So this one actually calls the TA20000 rule set. Okay, so let's go take a look at what we've got in that TA20000 rule set. Okay, so we've got our bomb component rule for this. Okay, with its own component ID of ISIS cur part, which the configurator is going to set to TA20000. The parent component ID that we're using is ISIS parent component, and that's going to set it to be the customer hours component ID, because we're calling it from that rule set. We've got our part number in here, so it's going to set it to TA20000. And then the operation number in here, you see it as 20. Again, that's because this operation must be a valid operation for the parent rule set. So again, that customer hours rule set had operation 10 and operation 20 defined. So we're just referencing that in this lower level rule set. Okay, and this has an operation 10 in it. Again, linking it back to that parent bomb component rule, and operation and purchase part TA21000, which I believe exists in Syteline, and it also references that operation for the TA20000. I've also put a screen rule in here just to show you how these rules are going to show up. So you'll actually see two different screen rules when we run this rule set. It's going to show you that one is from actually the customer hours rule set, and the other one is going to be from this TA20000 rule set. Okay, so that's our structure that we talked about here on the left. That is our structure and how it's been defined in Design Studio. Now there are a few other things that were on here. Okay. This is a commit rule, and what this is going to do, it's going to commit a price back to Syteline for us for the customer hours item. Okay, we also have a price, or an order and price information, an order detail rule and a price detail rule, and we'll get to those in a minute, but you can actually return values to Syteline using those rules. Okay, so now that we have a structure, now that we've seen our structure defined in Design Studio, what we're going to do is open up Syteline and configure this item. Okay, so I've got my customer hours item here. I'm in the customer order lines form. Okay, and I've already added it to this line, so I'm just going to go ahead and click configure. And I just have two screen rules in here. One from the customer hours rule set, I'll just put in 10, and one from the TA 20,000 rule set, I'll just put 20. So again, it's calling that TA 20,000 rule set and putting it in line here with the customer hours rule set. So I'm just going to click continue, and I'm going to click finish. And it should return to Syteline, and I have marked this customer hours item as prompt, so it's going to prompt me to create my job. So I'm going to click yes. Okay, it just takes a second. It's pulling in that information and from those CFG underscore tables, and it's creating my job. Okay, so job number 160 was created, so let's go take a look at what that looks like. Okay, so we've got our job 160, and we've got some sub-jobs, which is good. Okay, so if you remember, I'm just going to bring up that PowerPoint again. So we've got Operation 10. Okay, and under Operation 10, we've got our ZAL 400 item. And we've got our FA 20,000 and FA 30,000, okay, which is good. And then Operation 20, we have TA 10,000 and our TA 20,000. Okay, that's how we've defined it here on the left. So let's go take a look at each of these sub-jobs. So now, the FA 20,000 item, which remember was a configured item, and it was marked as job configurable in Syteline. It has a bomb at Operation 30. Okay, and it has the TDCI support item in it, okay, which did not exist in Syteline up until this point. Now, our FA 30,000, if you remember in the rules, and I'll just bring that up here really quickly, we had a structure that had Operation 30 in it, and then an item, and then two work instructions. Okay, but when you take a look at this in Syteline, we have Operation 10, 20, 30, 40. And again, since this item was not marked as job configurable, it's bringing in its current bomb. So the job bomb that was built here was actually the current bomb that existed in Syteline. I'm just going to bring this back over here to my main screen so you can see a little bit better. Okay.